with the events of what took place 24 hours ago when I, like you, was sitting there watching Sky News about what was happening when it came to that Eden-Monaro by-election. Now, as I said for weeks, the only thing that would be exceptional here would be if the government was able to win. Remember, for 100 years, the opposition always wins at by-elections. But there are 5 things that I need to tell you about my quick take on Eden-Monaro. We'll have Richo on tomorrow night and Rowan, and they can argue about a whole lot more. But the 2 main things is that the Labor vote is down and the Green vote is down as well. Let me show you. This is the latest numbers that came from the AEC this afternoon. That the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, they are up 5%. But as you can see, Labor is down 3%, the Greens are down 3% as well. Put simply, if this was supposedly, according to the media, that 9 out of 10 people were all in on climate change, or 9 out of 10 people believe this, or 28 out of 30 believe that, well, why did the Labor vote go down and why did the Greens vote go down? Now, the idea that the Shooters ended up being in this race but then sending preferences back towards the same side that the Greens does, to me, I don't quite understand, but we'll have the Shooters on a little later. So, key message. The further out left to the politics you go, even from 2019, where that big election was apparently a surprise, guess what? Things aren't going well. Also, under Anthony Albanese, nothing has changed. Let me explain. The leader is in many ways the person who can supercharge or hold back a party's vote. Now, you know this because we looked at these numbers for how long? About the 6 years that Bill Shorten was the leader. Now, as you can see, majority of people didn't think that he was the Prime Minister, but about a quarter of Australians overall did not know who the preferred Prime Minister was. About a quarter of Labor supporters did not know. And the intensity was only 6 in 10 had a passionate belief that Bill Shorten, going into the last election, should have been the preferred Prime Minister. We'll have a look at the poll about Albo, same 3 questions, last month. The don't know factor is exactly the same, if not slightly worse, than the situation that Shorten was in. But look at the intensity factor. When Shorten was looking at an intensity of 63% of Labor people thought he was the right leader, but Albo can only get 45%, then the party is in trouble. Now, a win is a win, and winning by 1 or winning by 1,000 doesn't really matter. But what does matter is the narratives that are going to come out of this about what does it really mean, about who's really up and who's really down. The problem is that in raw votes, now raw votes cannot be spun, they can only be looked at. In raw votes, the further out to the left you go, the less popular you are in an area that supposedly was the absolute epicentre for the revolution about demands when it comes to urgent action on climate change. That, of course, being the area, one of the areas most affected by the bushfires. But for that revolution to take place, you need to have a leader that people are going to be intense about. And if Labor supporters aren't enthusiastic about Albo, good luck trying to get the rest of the country. Shorten had 6 years to get the sort of lack of enthusiasm that Albanese has been able to put together in 1. Also worth noting here too, ferals are not quiet Australians. Now, you may remember way back when, the absolute height of the bushfire craziness, when essentially none of us were here to push back and tell you what's really going on, and the media narratives were through the roof, that you saw this nonsense happening at the height of the fires, where ferals were screaming at the Prime Minister.
You're an idiot, mate. You really are.
There's nothing quiet about these Australians. Their town of Cobargo was almost wiped out on New Year's Eve, and they're angry.
I don't see Kirribilli burning after the fireworks.
Their town has no power, no supplies, and they feel like they've got no hope.
This is not fair. We're totally forgotten about down here.
And they're blaming the Prime Minister for not doing enough to help.
We get nothing. If we were Sydney, if we were North Coast, we would be flooded with donations, with urgent emergency relief.
What a surprise the Sheila with a goat isn't exactly emblematic of the way people felt about the Prime Minister a year on, when they had their chance to take out their vengeance against this Prime Minister. And remember how much noise Twitter and the media had about that particular interaction at the start of the year? Well, at the very place where that took place, the Liberal vote went up. At the by-election, Almost 7% swing in favour of the Libs. Guess who went down? The further out left you go, be it the centre left or the far left. They went down. Ferals are not real quiet Australians. Twitter ain't real life. Another example about something that we should mention here, which is that it was a bad night for the spinners on television. The people who would one day like to be able to sit in the very chairs that I do, be they people currently or former serving in politics, both had a shocker. Two examples of them, including John Barilaro, who was absolutely certain 24 hours ago that we'd be talking about a Liberal win.
On those numbers, and Carabar, that South Queanbeyan area is a tough area for the coalition. I think once you add that into the pre-poll, I'll call it Libs have won tonight.
Oh, but while he'll be the one that you'll hear about on Media Watch tomorrow, this is the one that you really should be paying attention to. Kristina Keneally is the ultimate inside baseball player. The media love her for God knows what reason, but the voters, never really huge fans. Unsurprisingly, when she was sent out in the final week to help push down Labor's vote in Eden-Monaro, it worked a treat, just like it did when it was her accompanying Bill Shorten or her running, of course, the New South Wales Labor Party into the ground all those years ago. This is what she said about the seat of Eden-Monaro on Channel 2 last night. Have a look.
This is a seat that, after the 2015 redistribution, became Liberal. It's notionally Liberal.
Oh, it's a Liberal seat. It's a Liberal seat. OK, small piece of education here for the spruikers on television. Eden-Monaro was what was called a bellwether seat, that essentially it had always gone in the direction of the party that ended up winning government. That all changed in 2016. Because in 2013, Peter Hendy was elected as the local Liberal. He, of course, decided to conspire with Turnbull and Bishop to put the knife through Tony Abbott, and unsurprisingly, he ended up having a very low personal approval rating, as, of course, in 2016 there was the chance to turf Liberal MPs like him. Well, at the 2019 election, Eden-Monaro went again with the Labor Party. So it essentially had stopped this run of being the bellwether seat. Instead, the bellwether seats now are ones that have always gone with the government since 1996, and those are towards, I think, the seat of Petrie, actually, on the northern suburbs of Brisbane, is the actual bellwether seat. But as for the actual history of Eden-Monaro, 7 out of all of the MPs that they've had are Labor. It's essentially a 50-50 seat and has been the whole way through. The idea of notional preferential after 2015 was spin, it was BS, it was rubbish. So that's fine. You do the running of the country, we'll do the talking about it, OK? I'm happy with that arrangement.